everybody. How's it going? This is Rob Turley, co-founder, co-CEO at White Rabbit Intel, and your host at Down the Rabbit Hole podcast. So in today's episode, I have a special guest with me here. His name is Avner. He's an incredible man who does incredible things in the sales world. He is one of the few people where, before it was even a thing, was driving sales enablement processes and revenue intelligence, which is very exciting. You'd think, wait, how can he be more intelligent with revenue than a finance office or an accountant? Well, that's not really getting creative with it. That's just crunching numbers, right? So it's going far beyond that. And it's about driving your sales to new levels with new progressive processes that are far different from other things. So Avner, please introduce yourself. You'll do better than me anyway, right?
Well, first of all, thank you for putting this and for having me here. I'm really excited to be here. I've been following your podcast and interviews recently, and again, I'm very excited to be here. Altogether, I want to start with some background about myself. So, usually most people think that sales enablement or sales trainers comes with a very strong background, in sales. I actually started my career as an electrical engineer. But my career has always been around training customers and partners. At some point, given my technical background, I find myself managing a team of sales engineers, and my work started to focus more on sales tools, processes, etc. Yeah.
For sure. And so how did you enter the sales industry? Because I know that you didn't start that way.
I didn't. I started like any other training manager, managing a team of, developing developers and content creators, all that sorts of things. But around 10 years ago, I got a call from one of my friends who happened to be, VP sales of a young cybersecurity startup in Israel. I was given a simple task to, help me ramp up my team and shorten the onboarding cycle. So I did. I created everything from scratch because I knew nothing about cyber, and there was nothing but a sales deck to get started. So I started creating processes, content, infrastructure, and I mainly focused on getting to know the space, the cyberspace, because again, I didn't know much about it, and everything that I put together was basically going to serve me later as the onboarding program. So that was like my starting point, my entry level. The first step in the sales space, or sales enablement space.
That's definitely an interesting approach into there. That's usually very different from where other people come from. A lot of people come from HR, or they come from software development space where they were dealing with things from a front end perspective often, where they're kind of dealing with customers, but not really. And then driving that, or they get into some sort of sales engineering position where they're needed for the more technical speak in meetings, and then why not just do full cycle sales, right?
Exactly.
My question to you, though, is how did you get the nickname, the non-traditional sales enablement guy?
It's probably going to sound a bit funny. So I think altogether, given my non-sales background, that puts me in the non-traditional space. That's reason number one. Second reason, like a year ago, I was, introducing myself to the product management team, product marketing team. And then in some point, while I was, talking about my philosophy and my approach and going over numbers and graphs and visuals, explaining, what does it take in order to establish a sales enablement from scratch. Then suddenly, the head of product marketing just stood up and smiled to his team and said, forget about that. I mean, this guy is like, he's a non-traditional guy. Don't get panicked about all those numbers and visuals and, those graphs that explain what needs to happen first and second and so on. And, since that moment, I've been given other names as well, like, the special forces guy and the sales guy. Usually I work under the radar, and then when I find something interesting, I just surface up and share those insights. So that might
That's
explain,
awesome. Yeah. What type of insights do you find that are really unusual, that have really helped companies in a lot of different ways, like more pragmatic insight that people usually don't see? It goes unnoticed.
Oh, I can think of so many examples. I don't think we have enough time.
All you need is one. All you need is one.
I'll give you one. I'll give a very good one. So think about competition, competitive landscape, competitive analysis. So in most cases, what you get is just a very flat report we're losing X billions of dollars because of competition. These are, the top competitors we're losing to. And this is where we are over the last 4 quarters. We've lost X dollars because of, X, Y, and Z. So you might, settle with that. You might say, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Let's just go back to our drawing board and refine our playbooks and, objection handling documents, whatever it is, whatever it takes to mitigate those, competitors. But I'm not that guy. Again, I'm the non-traditional guy, and I don't just take it for granted. So when I look at those numbers, like how much money we're losing because of competition, the next step is let's see why, when, and not just, look at the what numbers are we losing. So, I mean, one of the examples I can share here with the audience is basically in some point, for example, I decided to invest time trying to look into each one of the sales cycle stages and see whether competition, shows up on stage one, like, during prospecting or qualification or whatever comes next. And what I was able to dig out was the fact that in some point, some teams, some segments, some reps are afraid of, conflicts, and they basically decide to leave that for a later stage of the sales cycle. And what's going to happen next is you're going to face a lot of competition, and you're going to end up, talking more about discounting and more about, pricing where you should not. So what I'm trying to propose here is another approach to trying to find out, how competition creates an impact on the sales cycle. And if you can use conversational data and behavioral data, and you can cross-reference that with the conservative CRM data that you usually use, that can give you a different angle on, why you lose to competition, if it makes any sense.
Right. That does make perfect sense. And people need to hold their data to their hearts, because bad data practices are a plague amongst businesses. They say, oh, yeah, we got the CRM because someone told me to, or, oh, yeah, you're supposed to be using one. And then you look in their CRM and it's stark. There's nothing. There's nothing there. They have the first name, they have the last name, they have the person's email address, maybe their phone number. They don't even have their mobile phone number. They don't have anything on that person, nothing about the deal, nothing about the amount of dollars that was made from that deal, nothing about the profit, loss, acquisition rate, any web analytics, how many times did they view it, where did they come from, tracking all that stuff. You need to know all of this, and nobody is doing it, or very few people are doing it. Like my company, for example, for a salesperson to fill out the CRM on one contact, they have to go through 65 fields. Do you know how long it takes? It takes exactly 30 seconds.
Amazing.
Once you get to the point where you have completely fucked your company over with no data, guess what? You know how long it's going to take to get all of that data in there, or try to pull it from docs, or try to pull it from previous conversations and everything? You've turned that 30 seconds that people might think, oh, I don't have the time to do it. Oh, you don't have time for 30 seconds of your life so that you can avoid months, if not years, of nightmares later, improve your revenue, and actually be smart about it, because data is how your entire company runs, whether you like it or not. What cracks me up the most are the companies that go, oh, we don't use a CRM, we just use an Excel doc. You what?
I've been there.
How does your company exist at that point?
Yep.
Oh, it's all in my head. It's like that, no documentation. Okay, so you're planning on expanding your company when? Never?
Yep. And when you decide to expand, to grow up, to scale up or scale out your business, then you realize, how important it is to become data driven and to be able to use the data in order to predict risks or opportunities to upsell, cross-sell, etc. This is when you realize that it's just not about, using Excels or standalone files, whatever, just doesn't make it, doesn't cut it.
Yeah, or even just know the simple fact of, who do I actually sell to? Who's my customer?
Yeah.
If you're not tracking anything, not even their industry, you don't even know who you sell to. It's just a shot in the dark the whole time.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. People do need help, and that is for sure. A lot of people, though, from conversations I've had with people, they're open to it, and they actually say that it's a weakness. They say, they openly admit, and they seem ashamed. They're like, oh, well, I don't really, because we're a data-driven company with, and what we do is working with contact data, it's people data. And when they say, oh, I don't think it's really in that good a shape, or they openly admit exactly what the problem is, and they are absolutely ashamed. They're like, I should be, but I don't have the time. No one has time. Time just keeps flowing. Time is irrelevant. It will take more of your time. You only have a finite amount. So let's take a little bit less time now to save a lot of time later. 30 seconds after a meeting. Like I was saying, 30 seconds after a meeting. Can we really not afford 30 seconds after a meeting? That's why you put padding time in between your meetings. Right?
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. Yep. So altogether, I mean, whatever you have, okay, you can settle with that. You can say that's enough, or you can actually complement that with different angles, and then you can gain more perspectives of your business, and that can shorten the time to make a decision.
Right. And would you be able to name some of those perspectives that you often bring to people that you work with?
Exactly. I mean, competition is one of them. Trying to understand why and when do we lose to competition, and maybe there are some other reasons why we're losing to competition, not just the simple flat fact that that these are the numbers, and maybe we need to go back to our drawing board and refine our collateral or whatever. So there are many reasons that you need to consider, and you need to take into consideration that most people just take it for granted. Other areas that you might want to consider is, let's talk about lead distribution.
The thing is, with round robin, that's great because it makes it even.
Yeah.
There's often issues that salespeople will get jealous of one another, or it will create problems because of the fact that if you pass a certain lead to a certain person, they'll get upset. Well, how come I didn't get that lead? Because right now, you know what VPs of sales are doing? This is what exactly this. They are distributing leads Oprah style because it's simply too much data.
Yep.
It's simply just too much data. They're going, you get 500, you get 500, you get 500, you get a car, you get a car, you get a car. That's how they distribute. There's no rhyme, reason, order, or any method to it whatsoever. If you hand the wrong lead to the wrong person, meaning if you put an aggressive salesperson onto a lead who is a decision maker, that is a relationship builder, you have lost that sale before you've even spoken to them because you put the wrong person on the job. How do you mitigate that risk? The only way that I know of is artificial intelligence technology, because there's no way to look at that much data as a human being. There's no way. And we often don't track enough data in the first place, so it needs to be aggregated, right? That should all happen on the back end. Right now, people are automating the wrong side of sales, the communication side. They should be automating the research and analysis side and analyzing their own employees to understand where their strengths and weaknesses are so that the right people talk to the right people. And I'm sure you agree with that.
I totally agree. And I've been there, actually. I can talk about my experience, how much time and efforts and labor I put into that process, not having AI-driven, systems. So altogether, there is a system. We've got a great lead generation system, but altogether, sometimes there are some glitches, and sometimes you end up distributing, quality leads to people that maybe they lack the experience, they lack the skills. Whatever the reason is, you end up having an unhealthy pipeline because quality leads end up at the wrong place. And I've spent some time trying to understand how the engine works, how the leads are getting distributed, and at some point you realize that if you were distributing the leads to to top performers or people that have got better skills, or whatever the reason is, okay, you could basically save millions of dollars. So if you can avoid that manual labor, manual work and hours with an AI driven system, I mean, it's a win-win situation.
It's not even just that, because a quality lead, it's not about the data. It has nothing to do with it. That lead is still one individual. It's one person. That's it. It's a person. The amount of data you have a person as a prospect is not relevant to the salesperson. The more data you give them, the more confused they get because they don't know what to focus on, or they'll focus on something that's not actually a causative thing. It's just something where it's, oh yeah, no, they qualify because as far as people go, it's probably VP of sales in California at a SaaS company. Okay, and what does that even mean? And the target for the company to get their content to is not the target for the individual salesperson. People are all different. They have personalities, they have interests, they have values, they have traits. If those are not, if the ability to see those does not exist, there's no way to distribute the leads based off of behind performance, which what does that really mean? the right person for the job needs to get put on it. So personalities need to match up. People do business with people that they like,
Exactly.
that they can resonate with, that they can connect to. So why are we not using AI? Well, one, because it didn't exist to do that. I mean, we built something like that. Fantastic. We don't know of anybody else who's done it before, but it's connecting people at the people level, because the lowest bottom performer may have been prospecting for the company's target, but not their target the whole time. So they will never see success. They resonate with the company's target, whatever that may be. But realistically, there should be a separate target for each individual salesperson, how they sell, the way they speak, their personality, their unique selling style versus the buying style, and everything like that. With AI, that's possible. Humans simply cannot just that much data. It's yeah.
I totally agree. You know, I've been, looking around and, trying to, I've met with some, surprisingly, even today, more and more businesses and startups are still, designing their business model around data. So it's not about the data. You're going to end up having so much data to consume and digest and process. It's not about the data. What's important is, getting actionable insights, being able to get to the point where something, a system, whatever it is, tells you, what would be the most recommended path to take based on the data that you've collected. So it's not about just the data. It's about, reducing the time to decision. And that's what basically where AI can come in and, improve all of that.
Right. And part of the issue is, okay, it's not about the data, but it's all about the data, though. It's not about looking at the data. It's about having it, and it's about being able to use it and process it, which people cannot do. So the data is not helping you as an individual. It needs to be made actionable and active by a system that can handle that. That's the missing link. It's not, we need more data to look at and to see who this person is. No, it's not even about that. The ability to have a conversation with one human being to another, that's what matters for the people. The part with the numbers and the data behind it, leave that to computers. Why do you think we built them? We built computers to crunch numbers. That's all they do. If you look at this computer we're using right now, I see this picture. It's a bunch of photons shooting at my face, that I'm speaking to a person right now over a microphone and like all that stuff. All this right here is just a bunch of zeros and ones opening and closing switches. That's all it is. It's just a bunch of switches turning on and off, and that's making all of this happen right now. So why aren't we letting the computers take care of that part of it when that's what we built them for?
Yep, definitely.
It's funny. I mean, what are we doing? We're automating the one thing humans are good at, which is creative well, I guess a couple things: creative thinking, intuition, and emotional connection, emotional intelligence. Computers don't have emotions. Why are we making them do the emotional aspect of it? That's the one thing we automated in sales is the top end of it: outreach, communication, automated messages. It's all nonsense. A cookie cutter message for people. Have you ever met a person that is the exact same as another person that you've met before? Probably not.
I mean, one size fits all doesn't work. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, why do you think they make different sizes, right? But and even if you were to automate that, you would need a way to understand what type of person they are to send a specific type of message to, which you would need hundreds of thousands of different types of messages for hundreds of thousands of different types of people for it to get sent out. But it would have to analyze who they are first in the first place. So it's actually counterintuitive.
Yep.
Right.
I agree.
So next thing though that I would love to ask you about is your idea of what revenue intelligence is. This definition is very different for a lot of different. If you ask someone this question, what is revenue intelligence? If you ask 10 people, you probably get 9 or 10 different answers.
I I totally agree. That's exactly, what I have in mind. That's, when someone asks me what is revenue intelligence, that's the exact answer I just say, There's so many ideas around that. If you ask, like you said, software vendors, they'll give you one version. If you ask sales operations, you'll hear another version. If you ask a BI analyst, you'll hear another version. The reason, we're having so many, multiple ideas and versions around revenue intelligence is, in my opinion, the fact that the space is still evolving very fast, thanks to technology, thanks to a bigger need in times of crisis, and, thanks to a bigger market awareness. So I think the bottom line is, the core principle of revenue intelligence has a lot to do with the ability to proactively predict risks and new opportunities in a very granular manner.
Yes, I agree with that. Revenue intelligence, to me, it's the outlook of the combined moving parts to actually have the bigger picture in play. It's about the bigger picture. It's not about, oh yeah, it's for sales. Oh no, it's for marketing. Oh no, it's for accounting. That literally doesn't matter. Revenue is revenue is revenue, whether it's going in, out, up, down, left, right, or you're lighting it on fire, right? Does not matter. It does not matter. So it's the bigger picture. Where's all the money going and why is it going to these places and why is it moving? So I would personally, I think that revenue velocity, so money velocity, that concept, that's revenue intelligence, being able to predict money velocity.
Definitely. Yep. And I think that, if you want to categorize, where revenue intelligence falls in the whole sales cycle, I see 3 layers or 3 pillars. The first space or the gap where revenue intelligence can help you with is the handoff between marketing and sales. Whatever happens between marketing and sales. The second gap or the second layer is whatever happens internally within the sales cycle. And the third pillar or layer is basically whatever happens between the seller and the buyer. And this is basically where new technologies and applications come up with buyer engagement applications that help you to better understand whatever goes on the buyer side. And then you can take it and then refine whatever you do during the sales cycle.
Yeah, I could not agree any more than I do with you right now. That's awesome. And I love what you said, where when it goes from marketing and it gets past to sales, what happens? What the hell does happen? Because it's beyond me. It's beyond my level of understanding. Because like, honestly, what the fuck? What the fuck? What, do they not talk to? I don't think they've ever had a conversation together before, except for in a meeting when they were forced to be in the same room.
Yep.
Sales and marketing exist together. They always should exist together. Then there's engineering and there's customer success. I look at it like it's a small engine, right? A pull start, small engine. If you try to pull start something, you might start it, but it's going to suck and you're going to pull it a million times. It may or it may not, but marketing is the primer. If you prime it first, you'll be able to start it more easily. Customer success is the throttle. If the throttle's too low, when you prime it, then start it, it will putter out. It'll, right? It won't stay on, right? And the engine, the mechanics behind it, that's all the engineering. Without the ingenuity behind it and without the actual product being kept up with and maintained, then the entire system won't run because there's nothing to run, right? So it's just a small engine. You're going to prime it. You're going to adjust the choke or the throttle. You're going to pull start it. It's going to start, and then you're going to adjust the throttle again so that it levels out. And that's almost exactly, and as long as the engine is running properly and it's well maintained, that is exactly how sales to engineering to marketing to customer success and so on all works. It's all part of an engine. It's all a system, and people should look at it more so like it's a system rather than, oh, that's not my division. That's not my problem. No, it is your problem. If engineering is not doing their job, customer success's life is hell. If salespeople are not doing their job properly, then marketing people's lives are hell, and customer success's people's lives are hell. Where if they're not, it's not a proper onboarding and sales process, then that's all shoved on a CS, and it's going to be the worst customer ever. And if marketing is getting the wrong leads in front of the sales team, their life is hell because they could barely close deals, and the deals that they do close are absolutely train wrecks, and that gets passed down all the way to CS, whose life is a nightmare, and then the engineers who don't even know what to do because they're not using the product and just complaining about everything anyway. So it just tanks the whole company. So these things need to actually work together. So my question to you is, how would you propose to actually have the system work together? And how would you recommend for people to start looking at this as a system? What would be the first step?
That's a great question. So I think that what you need to establish first is a benchmark of what works, what doesn't work from a product marketing or marketing point of view. So let's say that you've got a team that, just recently introduced a new campaign, a new messaging, a new whatever. Okay, you're introducing a new product. So product marketing usually comes up with a nice package of tools and and brochures and data sheets and whatever it is. And then, from a sales point of view, you're trying to memorize, you're trying to practice and execute on that. And then basically it takes time till, everyone feels, confident enough to pitch whatever it is. So what you need to do is basically measure engagement, measure success. So based on conversational data, using conversational data, you can either, you can find out whether the campaign, the messaging, whatever the sales tools that the product marketing put together, whether it works or not. So again, the bottom line is dig out conversational data, whatever happens on a call with a prospect, see whether there's some pushbacks, whether it improves the probability of the opportunity, how fast the opportunity moves throughout the sales cycle. Cross-reference that with the opportunity, the CRM data, the KPIs that usually people like to look at. If you can cross-reference conversational data and conservative CRM data, KPIs, then you've got the ingredients in front of you. Then you can go back to product marketing or marketing and say, guys, that latest campaign you just released, that really works, or maybe it doesn't. But at least you're in the place where you can actually see whether it works or not. You get to see and hear whether prospects push back. Maybe the messaging doesn't work, doesn't make any sense, or maybe it does. So basically, sales enablement need to be in the position where they can actually, probe, come in, listen, track, monitor, engage how prospects and sales are engaging with those campaigns and messaging, and then you feed it back to product marketing. If you don't have this system, you're gonna waste precious time, and it's gonna take you at least a quarter, maybe 2 quarters, to find out maybe we came up with the wrong messaging on that specific campaign. Maybe we should have used different wording, different ideas, different visuals, or maybe we should have targeted different people, different persona.
That's exactly where I was going to go next, is that if all of that's still not working, you're cross-referencing those. Another thing that needs to be added as an ingredient for this to be successful is looking at the demographic data. It's looking at the geographic data. It's looking at the market data, the economy, so micro, macro, and nanoeconomics, right? And it's also looking at the psychographic data and behavioral analytics outside of just conversation. What's the behavior? But that's more so for inbound and understanding how they're interacting. Psychographic data is amongst the rarest. So it's something that we specialize in, right? Understanding why they're making the decisions that they are. And often real life things in their personal life are going to affect their business decisions. There was a study that I read up on where if someone is really, they spend their money as fast as they get it, right? That's just their personal life. They just throw their money away. They make a ton of money and they just dump it in heaps, and they just throw it away because they love spending money. You're going to find that the people who do that are actually some of the most conservative business people. The reason why is because they need to be conservative to maintain that level of income to just throw their money away. So if you're looking for someone to take a risk in business, it's not going to be the person who takes the financial risks in their personal life. You'd think it's the opposite. Oh, they spend money all the time and they flaunt it and whatever in their personal life. And then they definitely, they probably spend money like that and just move things so quickly in the business. No, they don't move anything because they need to maintain their safety in their spending habits.
Yep.
It's stuff like that. If you can learn how they spend their money outside of the office, you could pretty much learn what types of risks that they'll take. What are their aspirations? What are their goals? What do they believe in? Their morals. What are their interests? Do you have similar interests? Do you have opposite morals? Everything like that. That all is relevant to the sale when you're building when you create the rapport, but then when you build the relationship will be driven by commonalities.
Definitely. Yeah.
I like this person because they remind me of me. Because that's what's happening. People are selfish that way, right? And one of my favorites too is that it's planting the seed so it becomes the customer's idea. This isn't just a method that's a good idea or it works sometimes and it's a psychological theory. No, it's because if I were to ask you unprofessionally, Avner, forget this is a podcast, and you have no idea who I am, and the voice inside your head is speaking outward, whose ideas are the best ideas?
Probably mine.
Exactly. That's what every single person's thinking. Whose idea is the best idea? Oh, my idea is the best idea
Yep.
because everybody's a little kid with a suit on, stomping around saying, I'm important.
Yep.
That's what it needs to be their idea. If it's your idea, they're going to go, oh, yeah, but that was his idea. I come up with better ideas than that. So if you're trying to tell them what to do, you're doing it wrong. It's about
Yep.
telling them what's wrong, diagnosing, and then angling and manipulating the conversation so that they can see your point of view and they ultimately decide that your solution is the best solution. It's a
Lead.
whole different way of doing sales, but if you don't have a lot of experience and knowledge in psychology or people like that, it can be difficult to learn, but that learning curve is worth it.
Yep. By the way, I totally agree, and that's one of the reasons I fell in love with this sales space, because it's not just the conservative approach to training, like support, etc. It's very binary. It's either it works or it doesn't work. Okay, when it comes to sales enablement and training in the sales space, there's a lot of angles, and one of those angles is the psychology, which you need to think as the audience you're talking to and be in their place. Try to predict any risk, any pushbacks that might come up with when you're talking to them.
The first step to improvement is admitting the problem.
Definitely.
You admit the problem to yourself, so you have to have them admit their own problem. Otherwise, they won't recover. They'll go straight into denial.
Definitely. And I find it sometimes the most, challenging part of my work. Because part of my work, part of, sales enablement work is before you get started, you design ideas and you start building content and processes. First, you need to understand what works and what doesn't work. And nobody likes to hear what doesn't work. They want you to wave those, that magic wand and come up with ideas without touching those, painful areas of friction.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. Everybody just goes, oh, wait, I have good news. And then I have great news. And then where's the bad news? The bad news is sitting there, but nobody's looking at it. Nobody's looking at it. It's like the problem in the room. They're like, oh yeah, your pipe has bursted and water is spilling everywhere, and you just put a sheet over the doorway to that room, and you're just like, oh, there's nothing going on over there. It's fine. It'll be fine. It's our water bill will be like $600. It doesn't matter. That's how people treat it, and I get that, man. We're two of very few people who are in the sales enablement space. It's a very misunderstood concept, and that's part of the problem. There needs to be the educated factor. That's why I like doing this podcast with you right now, because people need to know their data practices, their selling practices, their systematic approach. But, well, not even I shouldn't even say practices. It doesn't exist. Most of the time, it doesn't even exist. And the ability to connect with other people, the ability to connect their company with other people. The thing is with marketing, effective marketing is not just, saying, oh, our product does this. Oh, our company did that. Think of sales like dating. If you are on a date with the person of your dreams, describe them. Describe all their attributes. That's what you want your company to be to outside parties, right? That's how you want to be. You want to come off that way. It's the perfect match, right? But then when we start getting into what wouldn't you want on a date? It's like, oh, well, they kept talking about themselves. I didn't have time to speak. They didn't listen. They were rude to me and interrupted. Think like companies that are doing marketing where it's like, oh, like White Rabbit didn't tell this, White Rabbit didn't tell that, White Rabbit didn't tell this. All he did was talk about himself the entire time. Nobody wants to read your content. As soon as it's affiliated with a company, people feel like they're being sold to. It should be true value for the sake of value. We found out this, that, and the other thing, and this could help you in some way. And it's a fantastic thing. That's it. And then contact us if you want to talk more, or even going around it, creating a podcast. But the podcast can't be, for example, if my podcast was White Rabbit Intel's podcast, who would listen to it? Not a single person except for the employees that would feel the obligation to do so. Right. Next question is, what is it that happens in the day-to-day market that really just pisses you off to the point where it's like, why is this happening? It needs to stop now. What are those things for you?
What I find very, annoying is the fact that, you build a step from scratch. You build a new sales organization, you hire people, and you hire leaders, and all together, think that you've found the formula, the solution that works. And then, like a quarter later, maybe 2 quarters, maybe 3 quarters, some people are lagging behind, some people are, hitting their quota. But altogether, from a leadership point of view, I don't see many leaders spending time, coaching their team members. All they do is just managing their pipeline. Like, they focus their time and efforts in the last stages of the sales cycle, where they feel, their involvement is very important, more than, early stages of the sales cycle, which is extremely important in my point of view. So altogether, the general idea, or the common use case is where most of the tier one managers and leaders, they're spending their time and efforts on trying to see what can be done differently. Okay, from managing the pipeline point of view, or they're stepping in and to take over, the whole negotiation process. But if they could, spend some percentage of their time, on the early stages of the sales cycle, everything could look better, going towards the later stages of the sales cycle. And I see that every time. Just a few managers really, are in a position where they can actually coach their team members. And I find it very annoying, in my opinion.
I agree with you 100%, because how do you think it gets to that later stage in the sales? It needs to go through the first part to get to that quote unquote more important part. You're not going to get to that more important part unless you can actually assist with the opening. And I think that first opening is very important too, because the rapport needs to be created. And I don't like how companies have SDRs in a position, for example, where they're not allowed to close deals. What does that even mean? So you're telling them that they're not important enough to even earn their own commission. Sure, they should be trained into that, and they should have assistance, like you're saying. They should be coached and have assistance through the deals that they're going after. But they should be put through the closing process and also their original point of contact. I hate getting passed around. As soon as you pass someone to someone else, it's like, oh yeah, now that you're done with me, go to them. You've actually lost a large probability of closing because you just passed that person. You know how unimportant that makes me feel? Yeah. When I get as soon as someone says, oh yeah, let's pass you along to so-and-so, when I'm looking to buy something, they've lost me. It gets to me to the point where I literally am no longer buying your product because you're looking at me like I'm a number, not a person. Bye.
Definitely. I mean, that's like, that's the first touch point with the company, okay, you're working for. That's the first touch. So you want to leave a very good impression. You don't want to leave a bad impression that, we don't really care about that specific touch point, that specific stage. We're going to treat that like, the obvious, okay? This guy is just going to, book meetings with, the next person in line.
How does that tie into other processes like you were talking about? I'm saying in the sense of that original point of contact, because of the communication that was made and everything, bringing them along for the deal, maybe outside of the negotiation, when if that's what it turns to and the CEOs are talking and they're trying to negotiate with the rest of the board and all that stuff, that's not appropriate. But bringing them all the way to the point, the passing point to that negotiation aspect, or bringing them up to the close, if it's more of a transactional deal, they could do it. But training people where the salespeople are no longer objects. When they're SDRs, they're objects. It's just like, yep, just use them up, throw them away. That's all it is. But if you give them more purpose, I mean, how are they supposed to evolve into another part? How does that tie into the effectiveness of the data? Like, so the data coming in from marketing, the results coming in from marketing, the results coming in from sales, getting fed to the product team. Why is that aspect, that continuous point of contact aspect, important to the rest of it?
Yep. I think it's important that everyone, feels part of the process. Everyone feels like they're contributing to the process. And if you can establish a system where everyone feels, that they're contributing, there is a healthy handoff between one unit and another, one function and another, whether it's SDRs to, the account executives, then the account executives to the technical team that comes next, and so on. And, what happens when the opportunity converts into an account? What happens next? How do you maintain, that momentum with the other teams that are waiting in line, professional services, account managers, whatever? So you need to make, the system, to work together. You need to oil the system with data. You need to oil the system with processes. You need to make sure that everyone, finds the time and motivation to sync with others, because it's going to be for their own sake. So it's going to be either a new compensation plan or whatever it is, but you need to make sure that everyone works together. Everyone, finds the motivation and the time and the data to share with others.
And how does that affect a company's revenue?
Well, if it doesn't happen, it affects it very badly. You're not able to cross-sell, upsell, generate more revenues, and then the bottom line is, when that system doesn't exist, where people feel that they're part of the bigger picture, that everyone can contribute his part to the sales cycle and then to the whole customer life cycle. So what's going to happen next is you're going to end up with a lot of customers churning out, or retention is going to fall.
Exactly. Also, employee retention. You know how expensive it is to train a salesperson versus how expensive it is to coach them? Well, it's about 6 to 10 times less to coach them so they can get better and you can keep that employee versus a high churn rate out of your company. If you have a high attrition rate or a high churn rate of employees, that is a serious problem. It is far more expensive than just making them disposable. You make them disposable. Disposable things are always more expensive. Think of plates. You buy a set of plates, it's more expensive. Then you have to buy soap and you have to wash those plates and everything. But guess what? If you are just buying paper plates, sure, it's cheaper and they're just paper plates and you can throw them out and it's easy. The truth is, behind the matter there is that those paper plates, one, it's wasteful. Two, you're going to spend way more money on paper plates a month than it would cost for water, soap, and for the whole plate set, all included with one another. So stop treating salespeople like paper plates.
Definitely.
They're a dish, right? They're a nice dish. It's the fine china.
Well, I'd like to refer to, if you would ask me, what do you recommend in order to avoid that? What do you recommend in order to improve on that area? Like, to make everyone feel that they're part of the process, etc. And, to avoid, churn, employees leaving or whatever. So altogether, I think that if you go with a domain expert approach from day one, every part of the sales cycle and, whatever comes next, if you go with that approach, domain experts, and you basically, dedicate specific people to a specific space, and then they become mentors, okay, and then they can coach others. And then basically you move in multiple directions at the same time. From a vertical point of view, you can address more verticals more successfully. And basically people serve as an example to others. And from an enablement point of view, okay, it takes so much burden out of your shoulders, because those domain experts can coach others, and then you can focus on onboarding new hires in a more more productive manner. So altogether, if you would ask me, what can work better, domain expert from day one across the entire sales cycle.
I could not agree more. 100%. That's what needs to be done. Mentors need to exist within a company, but they also need to exist externally from a company. People think, oh yeah, coaching's a waste of my time. If your company is not going to coach you, you should pay for that yourself, because you make yourself a more valuable asset, not only to the company to increase your commission if you're a salesperson and all that good stuff, but in any position, if you're able to get a mentor, coach yourself, and actually invest in that type of training for yourself, you can potentially leave that company and go to a company where you're valued, and you would get a better position with a better pay, with a better commission value, because you're worth more, more, you're better, and you could be a mentor in that company. So it's all full circle. So even if the company's not investing in it, doesn't mean you shouldn't invest in it. I know that's a whole different spectrum, but
I couldn't agree more. And vice versa. If you can't invest in yourself, if you don't believe in yourself, if you don't invest in yourself, nobody would invest in yourself.
Invest. Would you invest in you? No, then probably no one else will, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
There's this really awesome quote out there that I love, where it's kind of a backwards way of, it's the way you should not think that everybody does think, just inherently, if they don't have a high level of self-awareness. And what that is you're not who you think you are. You're not who I think you are. You are who you are who you think I think you are. That's what it is. Because it's the way that others perceive you. When you explain, like, oh, who are you? What type of person are you? You're going to explain all of the adjectives and all of the descriptions that what you think other people think of you, not what you think of yourself or not what others think of you, because you can't get in their head. It's all perception of the people around you that you are assuming based off of your interaction with people, when that actually has nothing to do with who you are. Right. Yeah, right. It's a lot, but I think that's a pretty cool thing. I don't know, take it or leave it. If that was valuable to our audience here, or if that was valuable to you, I hope it was. It meant a lot to me the first time I heard that quote. I was like, oh my God. It was like just top level self-reflect right there. I was like, holy shit. Like, it blew my mind. And I had to meditate on it.
It takes time to sink in, but altogether it makes a lot of sense. And if you believe in that, it might actually change your chances of talking the talk and walking walk the walk, and be able to wear different hats and talk, be in the prospect shoes and really understand these pains, because you know exactly what they think of you, etc. So it makes a lot of sense.
Right. And reflecting on yourself, I mean, just
Yep.
understanding yourself, self-awareness, you'll understand how others think, because people are really generally the same. Everybody needs validation. Everybody wants to be accepted. Everybody wants some sort of attention or relationship. Everybody wants to be loved. People want to be liked by others. They want to be renowned. And they just want to feel cared for and like they belong. In the end, that's all it is. It's validation, acceptance, and yeah, just validation, acceptance. That's really it. Yeah. And listen to, I guess, would be another one. But anyway, moving forward from there, we are almost out of time. We've got about 5 minutes. So I'm going to hit you with something a little bit different. What's the most valuable technique or skill that you would say for people to work on? I know it's different for everybody because everybody has different strengths. And by the way, if you don't do it, you should be focusing on your strengths, not your weaknesses, like society has trained you your entire life. That's how you actually make it to the next level. But that's for the audience, not for you. Don't worry. But what's the most valuable skill or technique that you have acquired, or you would recommend for people to work on if it's one of their strengths throughout your career?
Well, the most obvious skill or behavioral skill is to put aside your ego. That's obvious. Everyone says that, when you start whatever, any type of, sales workshop, whatever, everyone says, like, if the ego is in your way, you won't be able to make it. Okay. You won't be able to change. You won't be able to improve. You won't be able to, embark on a new journey. That's the obvious. I felt it's important to say for those who are not familiar with that. In my point of view, the most important skill is agility, being able to adapt to a new space, being able to to learn something from scratch, being able to step out of your comfort zone, especially in times of crisis like Corona. Okay, so some might regard that as an opportunity to reskill, to upgrade your career, whatever it is, and some might look at that as as a weight on your ankle. So altogether, being if you are agile enough to step out of your comfort zone and step into a new space, might be a new industry that you're not familiar with, might be like maybe I'll just pause everything, maybe I'll just take the time and see what I'm happy where I am, from numbers point of view, sales performers, behavioral performers. Let's just pause everything and see, examine ourselves and examine our performance. And if at that point, if you can change something, then you're better off than others that are not able to change, whether it's their skills, their day-to-day routine, whatever it is. And I'm sure that you're familiar with the Sandler dummy curve. So if you end up at the bottom of the dummy curve, you're not agile. Okay, you want to be on top. That's what I'm referring to. So we can talk about it for hours. I mean, when you build a staff, when you build a sales team, when you build your team from scratch and you start hiring people, interviewing people, what I would look for in the first place is agility. Okay, whether the person I'm talking to, I'm interviewing, is agile enough. Okay, he has the skills to adapt to a new space. Is coachable. Is learning. Is eager to learn new skills and put aside his 15 years of experience. Because if he can't do that, he won't be able to succeed, especially in a complex environment.
Yep. If the teacup is full, you can't pour any more in it. It will just spill. So emptying the teacup, right? That old saying. And yeah, I
Yeah.
agree with the agility thing 100%. People need to be open to change because things change all the time. If you get stuck into a routine, especially when it comes to your career, that's the end of it right there. You're done. You check out. You've already given up.
And you can
That's
blame
it.
everyone else. Yep.
Yeah, and you try to blame everybody else when really you're the problem. Willingness to change and ability to adapt is huge. That is absolutely huge. I could not agree more. If you can wear several hats, fantastic. Otherwise, you'd be doing the same thing every day until the day that you die or you get fired because you're not willing to change.
But by the way, if you think that, if you believe that you're not able to change, but you want to change, okay, you're willing to invest in yourself in order to change because at the bottom of your heart that it requires a change in order to succeed. Some change are required. That's being agile as well because you know that a change has to happen. So again, going back to what we discussed before, if you're willing to invest in yourself because you know it's important to make a change because otherwise you'll be like you're gonna end up blaming everyone else for your faults, etc. That's important as well.
Yeah, could not agree more. It's the willingness to change is how people do change. If someone tells you to change, you won't change. And I don't mean you, I mean people in general. People do not change. They don't unless they choose to. You have to decide to change, then you will change. You need to drive your own change. Just because someone tells you something, you won't change. It needs to plant an idea, and that idea needs to move you emotionally. Once you're emotionally involved with the change and you've decided that you're going to, then all it takes is the action after that. You can change all you want. One thing that I would recommend, one of the skills that I've acquired that I think is extremely valuable is confidence. Confidence is key. Confidence is not intelligence by any means. You can find the dumbest person in the world who's just doing all the stupidest things you've ever seen, yet they're famous or they own a bit. I mean, I've met VPs of large corporations who are some of the just least intelligent, just incapable human beings. Yet, guess where they are? And it's because they have a hell of a lot of confidence.
Confidence.
Half of the battle, you need to look like and sound like and act like you know what you're doing. The other half is the skill and it's the education. If you have half, you can sometimes get there. But that's why people who are extremely gifted, some of the smartest people, geniuses out there, all they're doing is just being a worker bee or a lab rat. And they're sitting there just doing experiments, just living in their own world. And they're wondering, oh, well, I wouldn't be able to do that because I'm not a leader or, it's all just you're beating yourself up the whole time. And it's the disbelief in yourself and it's the lack of self-confidence. The lack of self-confidence is one of it's one of the most inhumane forms of torture because you're holding yourself back your entire life. So figure out where to find it, but get confident and drive your career with that because the confidence is how you move up instead of being an expert and the best exactly where you are.
Yep. You know what? I couldn't agree more. You've convinced me. I guess it's more important than agility, or maybe the two of them together.
No, the agility is the other half. The confidence is the first half. The agility, which is the knowledge and it's the experience and the skill, that's the other half. You need both to make the whole. And that's how you really become successful, right?
I agree. Yep, totally.
I love it, Avner. Anyway, man, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. We're unfortunately out of time here, but it was great. More than happy to do it again. And we need to work on some projects together because I feel like we could do some really awesome stuff. Anyway, that'll be it for us. And thank you all so much for listening. This is Down the Rabbit Hole podcast with your host, Rob Turley. And I have Avner Baruch here. I pronounced that correctly, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Wonderful. And this is Down the Rabbit Hole podcast. Hashtag DTRH podcast. Hashtag follow the white rabbit. Do not try to follow it on Instagram because my God, you're not going to like it. Fun fact. Thank you so much, everybody. If you enjoyed this episode, follow Down the Rabbit Hole podcast for new episodes weekly on Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Pandora, and YouTube. If you'd like to apply to be featured on the podcast or recommend a featured guest, please feel free to email us at theteam@whiterabbitintel.com.